What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another episode of WWE's Biggest Issue. This week's episode is on the pros and cons of Survivor Series War Games and what exactly could we expect to see at Survivor Series War Games. Now obviously you guys are well aware that War Games was not a part of the main roster for a long time. In fact, truth be told, it was actually a part of the NXT brand for quite a while up until this year. Now, I'm vaguely surprised that we're getting War Games on the main roster, but given the fact that the battle between Damage Control and Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss and Asuka, and with Nikki Cross added to the mix, and with what's been going on with the Bloodline and Drew McIntyre, the Brawling Brutes and whatnot, it's been crazy. It's been pretty crazy. So I'm assuming we might see something. We might see, a War Games match involving the Bloodline, and honestly, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool to see the Bloodline get step inside of War Games. But for those who don't know anything about the match known as War Games, the rules are simple. One member from both teams will start the match, and it's actually a minimum of 4 to 5 people to a team, so we can have up to 10 people inside of War Games. After 5 minutes, depending on who received the War Games advantage, after 5 minutes, that team will choose one team member to enter the match, and then after 2-minute intervals, alternating superstars will be allowed to enter the match. Once all the superstars have entered, then War Games begins. No countouts, no disqualification. Only way to win is pinfall or submission. However, should a superstar leave the cage, leave War Games by going through the door or over the top with both feet touching the floor, then you basically get disqualified for the whole team and you lose. It's just that simple. Now, obviously, War Games was first reintroduced to the entire WWE universe back in NXT in 2017, and it was announced that the original the original NXT TakeOver Houston would turn into NXT TakeOver War Games, and it was first reintroduced on November 18th, 2017 at the Toyota Center in Houston, where we saw arguably one of the most insane War Games matches possible. This one was 3 members to 3 teams. The Undisputed Era, the Authors of Pain, and Sanity. The Undisputed Era consisted of Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, and Adam Cole, baby. The Authors of Pain featured Akam, Razar, and Roderick Strong. And then, of course, Sanity featured Killian Dane, Alexander Wolf, and Eric Young. The Undisputed Era actually took the victory, which basically set the stage for what was going to be a future future, I guess, undisputed takeover, I guess you could say, by the UE. But 2018 was just as insane, because this is actually kind of crazy, because the Undisputed Era has been in every single War Games match, with the exception of last year's War Games, because last year's War Games featured Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, Grayson Waller, Tony D'Angelo, Tommaso Ciampa, Butch, Johnny Gargano, and LA Knight. So it was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy, but 2018 was rather unique because of the fact that if I remember correctly, I believe yeah, I thought so. If I remember correctly, I believe Fish and O'Reilly were the tag team champions at that point, if I'm not mistaken. Um, um, and I believe Pete Dunne was still the WWE, or rather now we see it as the NXT United Kingdom champion. And then Ricochet was the North American champion at that point, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it was the Undisputed Era against Team Dunne, which featured Pete Dunne, Ricochet, and the Viking Raiders. Or they were originally known as the War Raiders, NXT, of course. Hanson and Rowe. Now they're known as Eric and Ivar, which makes no sense whatsoever. It just does not make any sense at all. But it was a pretty crazy crazy matchup, to say the very least. Now 2019 became one of the most historic takeovers in history because of the fact that, well, we had women inside of War Games and inside the All-State Arena in Chicago. And it's interesting because with the fact that the reception from the fans was just out of nowhere, this became one of the most interesting cards of all time because of the fact that, the only title that was ever defended was nothing. No title was defended because all the titles were all the champions were inside of War Games. The champions were Shayna Baszler, the NXT Women's Champion, and Kaylee Ray, or I guess now Alba Fire, the NXT UK Women's Champion. And then of course you had all the members of the Undisputed Era, who Adam Cole had the NXT title, Strong had the North American title, and then Fish and O'Reilly had the tag team titles, which became one of the most interesting takeovers of all time. But here's the funny thing. Now, one thing that I want to point out with the women's War Games match is that originally Team Ripley was supposed to have featured Mia Yim instead of Dakota Kai, but because of the fact that Rhea Ripley wanted someone like Mia Yim who was aggressive in the ring, Dakota Kai didn't have that ruthless aggressive-ness that Rhea Ripley wanted. But yet Mia Yim was taken out by Dakota Kai, and Ripley was like, you know what? All right, you know what? If you wanted that badly, you're in. And she turned heel and attacked her former best friend Tegan Nox, and even with just two women, Rhea Ripley and Candice LeRae, they were still able to pull it off and defeat Team Baszler from out of nowhere, which was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy, to say the very least. But as far as the men's War Games match, originally it was supposed to have featured Matt Riddle instead of the next person that I'm going to talk about here in a second. But because of the rivalry that went on between between both Riddle and Finn Balor, Riddle was like, you know what? I want Balor. I want Balor at War Games. I'm out. So Ciampa was like, you know what? I'll make a call. And he calls Monday Night Raw, and out comes Kevin Owens. This was one night that we will never forget. But when you look at 2020, the reception from 2020 War Games was not what you expect. But the reason being was because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Was because of the COVID pandemic. COVID was still running rampant, and things were a bit interesting. So the women's War Games match featured Team Candice versus Team Shotzi, and Team Candice featured Candice LeRae, Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez, and of course Toni Storm, who ended up jump shipping from NXT UK to NXT against Team Shotzi, which featured Shotzi, Ember Moon, Rhea Ripley, and Io Sky. Crazy enough. Who would have ever thought, right? The men's War Games match featured the Undisputed Era against Team McAfee, which was Pat McAfee, Butch, Danny Burch, and Oney Lorcan, which became one of the most interesting, just because of the fact that Pat McAfee had been in one match prior, which was at TakeOver 30 against Adam Cole. This was only his second match. His third match, we all know, was at WrestleMania this past year on Sunday night against Austin Theory, and then of course 2 at SummerSlam against Baron Corbin, which was kind of an interesting one to say the very least. I'm surprised that Pat McAfee has been able to pull off the shit he was able to pull, but inside of War Games. But who would have ever thought, right? But the question is, what can we expect from Survivor Series War Games? Well, this is actually the first time that the card will not be Raw versus SmackDown. I don't even know if we're gonna have the men's and women's Survivor Series traditional matches, which I'm assuming that we are, because of the fact that, well, it's Survivor Series. You gotta have the traditional Survivor Series elimination match for both the men and the women. We also know that Ronda Rousey will be defending her SmackDown Women's title against Shotzi, which is going to be interesting with the fact that Ronda Rousey is going to have Shayna Baszler in her corner, and I'm assuming. There we go. I'm assuming that Raquel Rodriguez will probably be in Shotzi's corner, unless if like something else comes up. With the battle, with the fight that went on between the Bloodline and the Brawling Brutes and Drew McIntyre, I'm assuming it means that we're probably going to have a War Games match featuring them. But also, let's not forget that we still have the battle between the Judgment Day and the OC, which, now that Mia Yim is in the OC, one has to assume there could be a third War Games match on the card, which is a possibility, but we don't really know we don't know much about about this year's Survivor Series, because we're only like 2 weeks away. We're literally like a week from this Saturday away from Survivor Series, which we don't know. We don't know exactly who's gonna join Bianca's team. We don't know. We don't know. We honestly don't. But I'm assuming that with the fact that Candice LeRae has injected herself into this whole thing, and with the fact that Damage Control attacked Becky Lynch the night, the Raw after SummerSlam, I'm assuming it means that we're probably gonna see both Candice LeRae and Becky Lynch compete in War Games. Which Becky Lynch in War Games, that'd be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. But let's also not forget that there's still one more person for Team Bayley, but we don't know exactly who's gonna join. Given what's going on, I'm assuming it could be Rhea Ripley. It's a possibility, but if Becky Lynch doesn't come back in time for Survivor Series, then it's a possibility that it could be that Rhea Ripley could join Team Bayley, and Mia Yim joins Team Belair. Excuse me. Which is quite the possibility. Now, as far as the men's War Games match, who knows? There's no telling what can happen. We don't know if it's truly gonna be the Bloodline versus Team Sheamus, or I guess technically Team McIntyre. Maybe I don't know. Or if it's gonna be the Judgment Day versus the OC. We don't really know. We don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say, and it's a possibility as well. If you also think about it, with as well Seth freaking Rollins. It's a possibility we could see a potential fatal 4-way for the United States title. We could potentially see Bobby Lashley, Rollins, Mustafa Ali, and some other person, which could potentially be Matt Riddle, or just as a random thought, it could be Cody Rhodes for all we know. Because even though Cody Rhodes, was admitted that he was going to be out for 9 months, he could come back. He can be back at any given time right now. In fact, honestly, it's only a matter of time before he comes back. And if he does come back, I can guarantee you he's going to target Seth Rollins, especially with what happened earlier this year inside Hell in a Cell. But honestly, there's really no telling what we can expect. We know that the Undisputed Universal title will not be defended at Survivor Series. We know that the tag titles won't be defended. I'm assuming that the Intercontinental title could be defended as well, which is also a possibility. But let's be honest here. If it does get defended at Survivor Series, it'll probably be against the winner of the SmackDown World Cup, which we now know that this Friday on SmackDown, it's going to be Butch against Sami Zayn, which makes sense with with Sami Zayn being a part of the Bloodline, Butch being with the Brawling Brutes and Drew McIntyre. And then, of course, too, we have Mustafa Ali, which apparently why is he on SmackDown? I don't get it. I don't get why Mustafa Ali's on SmackDown. Because if you look on the superstar list on WWE.com, you could tell that Mustafa Ali is on Raw, but I'm assuming that they're gonna trade him to SmackDown for somebody else. I don't fucking know, honestly. Honestly, I could not tell you, honestly, but but I will say this though, I will say this. This is gonna be rather interesting to say the very least. So it's now down to the final 6: Santos Escobar, Braun Strowman, Ricochet, Mustafa Ali, Sami Zayn, and Butch. Who wins that World Cup tournament? Who knows? Who knows? All we know is that someone will challenge Gunther for the Intercontinental title. There's no telling what we can expect, honestly. It's hard to say, but those are just my thoughts anyway. I want your guys' opinion. I want you guys to comment below answering the question of the day, which is this. Who should join Team Bianca, Team Belair inside of War Games? Let me know down in the comments below, and that will do it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel and you guys want more episodes of WWE's Biggest Issue, which get posted every Monday, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and follow me on all my social media. Links will be in the description below, as will the info to my fan mail. It will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.